Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
So should we start by 10:05
Yeah.
so that others can also join by then?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So far 13 have joined, I think.
Yeah.
Aishwarya, we can start after about 5 minutes.
Yes, so we plan to start by 10:05 in 2 minutes.
Right. Okay. Good morning, RR.
Morning.
Good morning, Amit Gupta, Srinivas Rao.
Sir, very good morning.
Good morning. Sir. Good morning.
So shall we start?
What does KSR say?
We can start.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. It is my privilege to introduce this important discussion on the critical review of the amendments to Regulation 24A of SEBI LODR Regulations 2015, which pertains to the secretarial audit of listed entities. These amendments are pivotal in enhancing the regulatory framework for corporate governance, transparency, and compliance, particularly for listed companies. With these amendments, SEBI aims to strengthen this process and address emerging challenges and expectations in the ever-evolving landscape of corporate governance. I'm pleased to announce that Mr. Raghunath Ravi, partner KSR & Co, will be leading today's discussion. Sir, with his extensive expertise in corporate governance and regulatory compliance, will provide us with an in-depth analysis of the key amendments, their implications, and how they impact listed companies in practice. We look forward to a detailed examination of these changes, the potential challenges they present, and the positive effects they could have on corporate practices. I encourage all of you to actively engage throughout the session. And now, without further ado, let me hand over the session to Mr. Raghunath Ravi to take us through the critical review of these amendments. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, normally the discussions on any amendments to any regulations, there will be the discussion on the salient features of the amendment. But here, I prefer to have some questions relating to the amendments made to Regulation 24A relating to the secretarial auditors, which in my view requires a lot of clarifications or further amendments. Although there is a view that the institute has given a clarification that there are not going to be any such issues as I look upon. So we will come to that later because there is a clarification in one of the sessions of the Institute of Company Secretaries where it has been clarified about the apprehensions I am raising here. Because the regulator is SEBI and institute is only a body which regulates its members and also handles the peer review subject. So whether the clarification given by ICSI in relation to some of the issues that I am going to raise here will be binding, given that the regulator is silent on that. We will address those issues one by one. Now, the subjects, go to the slide, Aishwarya. Aishwarya. So the three main points that I will be covering here is only my view or apprehensions, although majority may have a different view. First is the peer review requirement for the partnership firms. Second is the removal of the secretarial auditors. Third one is the obligation of the listed entities in relation to the secretarial auditors, where the regulations say that they should ensure that the secretarial auditor is in compliance, continues in compliance with the eligibility norms, right? So with this main headings, let me go to the main points for discussion. Aishwarya, you can go to slide 2. Hello. This I have. Go to next one. I have covered this. Yeah. See, the present position is ICSI has the practice of only giving the peer review certificate for the individuals where that individual is carrying on the profession of a practicing company secretary. In the case of a partnership firm, the peer review certificate is issued in the name of the partnership firm and none of the partners of the firm is required to obtain separately the peer review certificate. Of course, there could be a situation where one of the partners of a PCS firm is also into private practice, and therefore he holds a peer review certificate, because as per the ICSI norms, without the peer review certificate, one cannot carry on the profession of the secretarial auditor. So, in essence, for PCS firms, there is no need for the partners of the firm to hold the peer review certificate. The amendment requires that if you go to regulation 1A proviso, provided that a firm whereof majority of partners practicing in India are or qualified for appointment as aforesaid may be appointed by its firm name to be the secretarial auditor of the listed entity. And C says, and B, where a firm including a limited liability partnership is appointed as secretarial auditor of the listed entity, only the partners who are peer-reviewed company secretaries shall be authorized to act and sign on behalf of the firm. And the next one, C says, where a person appointed as secretarial auditor of the listed entity incurs any of the disqualifications as specified by the board after appointment, such person shall vacate office as a secretarial auditor, and such vacation shall be deemed as a casual vacancy. Now, this is the context in which we need to address whether there is any requirement in the form of clarification from SEBI or amendment to be made by SEBI to make it clear. Because when it says majority of the partners practicing in India are qualified, and the definition says peer-reviewed company secretary means a company secretary in practice who is either practicing individually or as a sole proprietor or as a partner of a peer review practice unit holding a valid certificate of peer review issued by the institute. Right. Now, on one particular interpretation, it means that a partnership firm, let us take any partnership firm or LLP, there are 4 partners today. And as per the current requirements, it is only the firm which holds the peer review certificate, and none of the individual partners holds the peer review certificate. If this is made mandatory that majority of the partners should hold the certificate, then over a period of time, in the firm where there are 4 partners and the requirement being majority, initially there are 3 partners who hold valid certificate. And after some time, one of the partners becomes, his ability, his PRC is, he is not in a position to renew the PRC. So, although he continues as a partner, he doesn't hold the PRC. Again, it is not the requirement that to be a PCS firm, all the requirement of PRC is applicable for all assignments. As per the current amended provisions, without such prescribed norms, without the prescribed, without the norms met, they cannot do the secretarial audit or issue certain certificates as prescribed under the regulations. So the effect is, it is a firm registered with ICSI, but because of the 4 partners, only 2 continue to hold the PRC, then it becomes ineligible. Then does it mean from that date it becomes ineligible to practice, or does it amount to vacation of office? Right? And there is another requirement that where that is 24A1 C. The casual vacancy arising out of resignation, death, or disqualification of a secretarial auditor shall be filed by the board of directors of the listed entity within a period of 3 months. And the secretarial auditor so appointed shall hold office till the conclusion of the next annual general meeting. Now, in the example I have given, the disqualification, it amounts to disqualification, and therefore he is not eligible to continue. But does it mean vacation? And given this, the part which I read out now, it has to be filled in by the board. Now, can the same firm appoint another one with PRC so that it meets the requirements, and that firm can continue as the secretarial auditor, or because the number of PRC holders having come down below the majority, it has vacated the office, and therefore necessarily the listed entity has to appoint another entity, another firm. This one issue. Second, so this is one point I will raise now for discussion. Second is the removal of secretarial auditor. Now there is a simple single one sentence regarding the removal of the secretarial auditor. Unlike the provisions in the Companies Act regarding the removal of the statutory auditor, which calls for the reference to the MCA and then the shareholders to approve the removal. But here, because one possibility could be the secretarial auditor has recorded some adverse observation in his secretarial audit report. That doesn't go down well with the management. Therefore, they propose removal of the secretarial auditor, and all that is required in that case is convening a board meeting, and the rules say that it should be with the approval of the shareholders, and that too at an AGM. Aishwarya, can you go to that? Aishwarya,
So,
can you go to that part?
so is it visible?
No, I don't see. Provided further that nothing contained in these regulations shall prejudice the right of the entity to remove the secretarial auditor with the approval of its shareholders at its annual general meeting, or the right of the secretarial auditor to resign from the office. Now, the resignation is the decision of the concerned secretarial auditor. But because of a particular reason, the management of the listed entity wants to remove a secretarial auditor. In that case, all that is required is convening a board meeting and get the approval of the board to convene a shareholders meeting. And with majority shareholding, the secretarial auditor can be removed. Compare this with the provisions under the Companies Act for the removal of the secretarial auditor. Right. Third one is the obligation of the listed entity to ensure that Aishwarya, can you go there?
So is it visible?
Yeah, that is 1C, with effect from April 1st, 25. Every listed entity shall ensure compliance with the sub-regulations 1A and 1B for appointment, reappointment, or continuation of the secretarial auditor of the listed entity. Now, not only there are obligations on the part of the secretarial auditor to be in a position to continue as a secretarial auditor, but the entity which has appointed a secretarial auditor is also under obligation to ensure that the secretarial auditor continues to have the eligibility as the secretarial auditor. Now, the example where I gave of the 4 partners, it gets reduced to 2 of the PRC holding partners. Now, how will the company come to know whether there is a requirement for the company to approach the secretarial audit firm every month asking for the continued compliance with the requirements to continue as secretarial auditor? How this is possible? This may look funny, but the provisions are funny because even for the the statutory auditors, there is no such requirement. There, the eligibility to continue is based on, apart from other not hit by other disqualification norms. One of them is the peer review certificate being held by them. So we have seen many cases where the secretarial auditors informing the listed entities that because of their inability to get the PRC, they are unable to continue. But that is only in the case of an individual. Never has been there a case where the firm has been affected because of this. Because again, like the current provision for the secretarial auditor, the PRC is only with regard to the firm and not in respect of the majority partners. So how will this be possible? And how will the company, the listed company, approach or ensure what is the mode by which the listed entity would ensure that their secretarial auditor continues to have the eligibility to as a secretarial auditor? This is another question. So, and one more point is the appointment of the statutory auditors is done in an exhaustive manner under the Companies Act. Now, 204 of the Companies Act deals with the secretarial auditor, and it applies to some certain prescribed unlisted companies also. So why not the provisions relating to secretarial auditors be made part of the Companies Act? Of course, SEBI may prescribe additional provisions, like in the case of related party, it is quite wider than what is contained in the Companies Act. Again, audit committee, the composition and the powers are wider than what is captured in the Companies Act. So let there be a basic provision in the Companies Act. To the extent SEBI feels there should be further provisions applicable to secretarial auditors of listed companies, but without breaching the or going beyond the provisions contained in the Companies Act, it can add more provisions so that in the case of listed companies, there is a requirement to have more rigid provisions on the secretarial auditors. See, the point here is we are not against introducing provisions for secretarial auditors by SEBI, because ultimately the objective being as listed companies, entities, the audit should be more, the quality should improve and the entry norms for secretarial auditors should be prescribed in order to ensure good governance. That is not in doubt. But to have prescribed the rules which lack clarity and adds to confusion, there should be a need for SEBI to review the whole provisions, and it has to consult ICSI and MCA so that the revised norms do not suffer from any accuracies. This is the substance of my recommendation or finding. We may debate on these points.
This peer review company secretary, which is now PRCS instead of only PCS.
Yeah.
Whether PRCS is part of our peer review guidelines?
No, see, part of
our ICSI peer review guidelines, does it cover any peer review of partners of a firm, or it is only the firm that is getting peer review?
No, see, in respect of practicing company secretaries, it is either individual or a partnership. Where individual is the PCS, that individual has to get the peer review done by the institute. Where it is partnership firm, it is the firm which is awarded the PRC, and there is no need for the partners to have obtained the PRC certificate, PRC. So this is a new one. In fact, what I have not covered is what is the, if this is held as per institute norms, the clarification, it says that the present PRC firms, the secretarial audit firms, all the partners are deemed to have PRC, right? Then, but suppose SEBI takes a different view, because the regulations are made by SEBI and this clarification comes from ICSI. How far this is valid? Is it binding on SEBI? Has ICSI discussed with SEBI and got its endorsement for the interpretation that it has given now? This has got double effect. One, the firms are not sure of whether the clarification given is valid, and how would the listed entities ensure that there is continued compliance on the part of the company secretary, the audit firm.
See, one important point I want to raise here. In the amendments to the regulations, they have given a clarification as regards the meaning of a PRCS.
Yes.
This clarification is stating that every firm or individual practicing company secretary can be a practice unit. So the use of the language appears to be aligned with the guidelines of the ICSI with respect to peer review. When the explanation says peer reviewed company secretary means a company secretary in practice either individually or as a sole proprietor, as a partner, so of a peer reviewed practice unit. Therefore, practice unit seems to be the denominator when it comes to offering peer review certification and as per the guidelines. And this language of practice unit has come from the peer review guidelines only is my view. Therefore, when the explanation to 24A1 says peer reviewed company secretary, that is PRCS, includes a practice unit which is as a partner, the language has to be understood in this way. I will read once again for the benefit of the audience. PRCS means a company secretary in practice. So the first sentence is singular in nature to understand. A company secretary in practice is used. A company secretary in practice. Come to the next sentence. Who is either practicing individually or as a sole proprietor. There is no meaning of these two words because a person has to be practicing individually means he is a sole proprietor or as a partner of a peer-reviewed practice unit. A partner also is indicated.
So you're on mute.
I have not muted. I don't know. It has got muted. I was reading for some time now. Hello?
Yeah, you are audible.
I don't know how I got muted suddenly.
No, you have to. No, you have to continue from a partner of a practicing. Yeah,
I
from there.
will read once again. PRCS means a company secretary. So I was trying to drive home the point. It is singular references about an individual and singular. A company secretary in practice. Either practicing individually or as a sole proprietor is something which is slightly not correct. Leave it. Or as a partner, again in referring to an individual, or as a partner of a practice unit. So when you read this explanation, the whole regulations is structured in a way that it continues to refer to an individual PCS, whether an individual sole proprietorship or a partner of a firm or LLP. That individual is the practice unit. That individual is the person who is getting reviewed as a peer reviewed PRCS. If you keep this particular denominator in mind and go to the next clause where they are talking about eligibility and all, I am reading 1A, Class A proviso, first proviso. Provided a firm whereof majority of partners practicing in India are qualified for appointment. So then we are talking about partners individually becoming PRCS, and that is why this provision, this proviso, talks about a firm whereof majority of partners practicing are qualified. Now, class B, where a firm including LLP is appointed as a auditor, only the partners who are PRCS. Therefore, reading explanation under regulation 24A1 read with 1A proviso as well as class B, I can very clearly say that the whole regulations under 24A without any contradiction refers to individuals only, proprietor or partner. On the other hand, or to the contrary, the practice unit under the guidelines refers to a PCS as a proprietor or a partner. The firm is getting peer reviewed. So the regulations refer to individuals to be PRCS. Guidelines consider whole of the firm to be peer reviewed. The reason why ICSI guidelines have stated the whole of the firm to be peer reviewed and continues to recognize the firm itself as the peer reviewed practice unit is you cannot have a peer-reviewed practice unit, a partnership firm where individuals follow different processes. The firm follows the uniform process where whoever is the partner of the firm, everybody is aligned with that process, which is what is peer-reviewed. Therefore, ICSI looks at the firm as a whole, if it is a partnership firm or LLP, and grants peer-reviewed certificate or status, whereas SEBI has looked at totally different, distanced or diverged from the practice and provides an individual status. If you read the explanation the way I have read it now, read with the class A proviso and class B of 1A, you will be able to see SEBI looks at individuals being reviewed. So there is a sea of difference between what is actually there in the ICSI peer review guidelines and the SEBI, how it has looked at it. If we are able to get a clarification that it is not about individual, it is about the auditor, secretarial auditor, whether individual or a firm, if they are a practice unit, peer reviewed practice unit. Peer reviewed practice unit, we can call it as PRPU instead of PRCS. If the secretarial auditor, whether individual sole proprietor or a partner of a or a partnership firm or an LLP, that is PRPU, peer reviewed practice unit. Then the matter gets reconciled between what ICSI is doing or what other institute is doing and what these regulations have introduced. That is my submission with respect to adding clarity on how I look at the amendments. There it is individual is the practice unit under the whole of the regulations. Whereas here firm or sole proprietor, whoever is practicing, that is the practicing. The reason is in the practice unit, whether partnership firm or LLP, individual partners cannot follow different processes to do a same secretarial audit job. Processes have to be uniform throughout the practice unit, and therefore no individual partner will have whims and fancies to have different peer review certifications. I follow this process, so you get PRCS. Another partner follows another process for the same secretarial audit, get another PRCS. I don't think these things will happen. Thank you.
No, so what is the final view you are saying on this?
Final view is that the SEBI regulations 24A confines to practice unit, whether it refers to a partner or sole proprietor, it talks about individuals getting peer reviewed, which is totally divorced from actually what is there in the guidelines. Therefore, regulations require amendment to bring this clarity, align it with this. We will achieve no problem because time is running out. 31/3/2025 is not far away.
Correct. So this point is, it needs clarification from SEBI, although ICSI has given an indicative clarification. That cannot be a binding one.
No, ICSI may be deliberating. They will have their own process. They cannot suddenly just like that, but they may be aligned with our thoughts. Equally, like we think, they would have also considered there is some synchronization problem we need to take up. There will be a process. They will do it. We can also offer our clarification or representation. I am sure they will consider it.
See, now if you see 1A proviso, provided that a firm whereof majority of the partners practicing, right, are qualified for appointment as aforesaid. That is the confusing point. So, see, qualified for appointment is understood. It adds as aforesaid, which refers to 1A, 1A1, 2. Those are the clauses which are coming under as aforesaid. That is the area where confusion is caused. See, if the intention is in the case of a firm, there is no need for individual partners to have the PRC. It is a simple matter. The drafting is in a confused manner, and the risk is after 1st April 25, some of the firms or most of the firms do not take, and of course the problem is for ICSI, there is no provision for PRC for individual partners of a firm. So it talks about two different things. There is a cutoff date for the firm, and the PRC is issued only to the practicing entity, whether it is individual or a firm or LLP, right? In the case of firm and LLP, there is no possibility of PRC for individual partners. Now, in this background, when they say, where provided that a firm whereof majority of the partners practicing in India qualified for appointment as aforesaid.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
And second, it also refers to those partners of a PCS firm who cannot issue the certificates. Therefore, there are two classes in a PCS firm. One with PRC, another without. Then what is the meaning of B? 1AB, where a firm including limited liability firm is appointed as CA, only the partners who are peer-reviewed company secretaries. Then what does it mean? If you say it is the firm which is peer-reviewed, then how could there be two kinds of partners, one with and the other without the PRC? These combined, these two or three provisions are only complicating the provision, the scheme, and there is a need for SEBI to come out with clarificatory notifications. It is not simply one can say it's only the as long as it is a firm, there is no need for individual PRC holding requirement. That's not that simple decision we can take, because when you make a combined reading, it only adds to confusion, and whether the PCS firms can take the risk of being complacent, and how the listed entities would ensure the compliance on the part of their PCS firms. These are the issues to be addressed.
I am looking at from the angle of my explanation is that SEBI regulations have considered practice unit as an individual, be it a sole proprietor or a partner of a firm. SEBI has gone about looking at the whole concept of peer review practice unit from an angle of a singular individual basis. Therefore, assuming there is a provision under ICSI for all the PCS, whether they are sole proprietor, individually practicing or as partners, individually they should be peer reviewed. Individually. I am not suggesting that I am not subscribing to that view, because I have already stated you can't have different partners of a same firm following different set of systems and processes. Therefore, leaving aside that for a particular time, for a minute, regulations 24A is designed with individual PRCS in mind. If there had been any such individual PRCS, irrespective of whether it is proprietorship or partnership, for each PCS to be obtaining a PRCS, these regulations will not have any difficulty in interpretation in that aspect. Unfortunately, that is not the scenario.
Correct.
That is not the case. Therefore, it requires some sort of a representation, clarification, and whatnot. We hope that the ICSI as well as SEBI will look at it and bring about the requisite clarification, so that secretarial audit firms do not require all their partners to be reviewed as PRCS separately, which is, in my opinion, an unnecessary task as well as not a desirable one, because as a firm, there must be same set of systems and processes, whoever be the partner of the firm. Malti, you have some questions, you raised your hand.
I am trying to connect this particular sentence, like only peer reviewed partners can be authorized. That sentence is to one of the questions that is available in FAQs on peer review issued by ICSI. I would like to share the screen. Can I? Yes. Question 47. Question 47 refers to induction of a new partner and that partner's whether he'll be getting the peer review benefit or not. So it answers that the benefit of peer review is available to the partner of the practice unit as on last day of the year under review. In case a new partner is inducted in the peer reviewed unit, the newly inducted partner would not be eligible to get the benefit of the peer review. If practice unit wish to extend benefit of peer review to the partners inducted in the practice unit, it has to undergo peer review again with the services rendered by inducted partners in the PU. However, in case the partners belonging to a peer review unit resign and is inducted in another peer review unit, the benefit will be extended to such partners.
See,
So,
no, see, this is understood. See, because as
yes, sir.
as I said, one of the partners of a partnership firm is also into individual practice. Relating to that practice, he must hold a peer review certificate. Okay. Without a peer review certificate, an individual CS cannot undertake secretarial audit. Right. That is the context. But here, the scope is totally different. Particularly, I am focusing on B, 1AB, proviso B of 1A, where it segregates one who are competent to issue and others not. So, there cannot be a firm where, see, let us take the present case. In most of the PCS firms, it is only the firm. And if there are 4 or 5 partners, none of them will individually have the peer review certificate. So keep that in mind and read this B, where a firm, including LLP, is appointed as secretarial auditor of the listed entity, only the partners who are peer reviewed company secretaries. Now, how this is possible unless all the partners are required mandatorily to have the peer review certificate that have never been stated in clear terms. Let there be one clause which says, regardless of the firm, all the partners, individual partners, should have PRC. Then this will hold meaning. Now, nowhere it says, it is only an inference because of the majority and this one who can sign and who cannot sign. This is the cause for confusion. We do not know really whether SEBI intends that all partners in a firm should have PRC. Without, omitting that specification, has it gone ahead with the drafting? Or if it never intended so, then this B and the majority should be removed. Definitely, it calls for a thorough revision. That's the point.
Do we have any person in the audience who would like to raise any questions on this topic? Because I think we need to move to the another topic of removal at the AGM. So if RR, shall we ask the participants if they have anything to share?
Yes, if they have different views.
Yes, so So no one has raised their hands. Uh, In
So
case
we,
anyone has any queries on this topic, you may please ask now.
in that case, we can't gauge whether they endorse our views or they have no questions and they go by what is covered in the regulations presently.
So Shruti has raised her hand. Shruti,
Yeah.
May I please know that since we are saying that there is an ambiguity and whether all the partners need to partners of a PCS firm need to obtain a certificate. So, like, what should be the course of action for us as company secretary?
Shruti, I will say even ICICI will not have answer for that because going by the clarification given, the latest one, they don't feel it is mandatory. But whether they need to review their views, that is the question now. And if ultimately SEBI says yes, all partners should have PRC, then April 1st, the deadline is not achievable. At least for that, there are two things here. ICSI has to devise some procedures for the PRC for the members who are partners of this one PCS firms. Second, how long it will take to award the PRC because it has to be the review has to be done by the members who are registered with the panel of ICSI. What is the number of requirement for new PRCs to be obtained by the partners of the firm? And what is the population of the peer review panel members? How long it will take? Accordingly, the deadline has to be shifted.
Sure. Thank you so much. This answers my query. Thanks.
so we have another person raising their hand, Mr. PG. I think he's lowered his hand. Can we move to the next topic?
Yeah. The next one is the removal of the secretarial auditor. As I said, now it's the whims and fancies of the management without having any rigid provisions, or I would say reasonable provisions for removal of the statutory auditor available under the Act. Here, in one stroke, the secretarial auditor can be removed. That should be plugged. And the second limb of that, removal can be only at the AGM. So they want to remove somebody from secretarial auditor position. They have to wait for the AGM. In one way, in lighter vein, it gives some longer life for the targeted secretarial auditor.
Aishwarya?
Anyone having any queries on this? You may please ask.
We have summed up previously also. RR had clarified that it would be better to align the provisions regarding appointment, qualification, disqualification, removal of secretarial auditors, bring it under the Companies Act, aligning with the auditors generally. So that answers the entire question. But regulations have thought it fit to say that removal can be by a resolution at the annual general meeting. So maybe it's very hastily drafted or something. That's why they are talking about the annual general meeting, they say, with the approval of the shareholders in its annual general meeting. Proviso, I am reading the clause, the second proviso under class B, under regulation 24(1) itself. The other thing is the casual vacancy, class C. There also they are saying within a period of 3 months, and secretarial auditor so appointed shall hold office till the conclusion of the next annual general meeting. For this particular class C, there may not be any problem.
Yes.
But when it comes to second proviso under class B, there is a problem, because why would you wait until the annual general meeting, which means appointment as well as removal of auditors would take place only at annual general meetings. So that is getting clarified by the suggestion Mr. Raghunath Ravi has made, that it shall be aligned with the provisions of the Companies Act. So regarding auditors, secretarial auditor could also be the same way: appointment, removal, resignation, retirement, and whatever provisions are there, so that it becomes a complete guidance aligned, and we follow the same procedures as we follow for others. That's all I think for the day.
Yes.
So for obligations of listed entities, would you like to say anything, which is the third limb of the session?
No, see, when the PCS himself is not clear on what is his obligation regarding the ability to continue as PCS, how would the company, the listed entity, would be in a position to understand the provisions? And one extreme case, suppose the company checks with the PCS firm about the ability to continue. The PCS firm says, yes, there is no any disqualification or any other event which affects their ability to continue has taken place, then it has to take that declaration and file it as a record. That's all. When the rules are not clear, even for the, I would say, the regulator himself, the PCS firms, and therefore the companies will also be in the same similar situation. It is, there is no impact on the part of the individual company secretaries. Only the PCS firms are facing all these confusing provisions.
So what happens when in between a tenure, the peer review certificate expires? How do we deal with that situation?
That's what I meant. See, of the 5 or
Yeah.
4, one becomes ineligible because he is not in a position to renew his certificate, right? And he continues as a partner, right? So the total number of partners will remain the same, but his eligibility to sign certain documents is affected. That's the example I gave. Of the 5, one is unable to renew his PRC. That results in the total number of eligible partners coming down below the majority. That becomes a cause for vacation. And the next, the incidental question I raised, whether within that 3 months window, the same firm can induct another with PRC. Is it a cure, or the moment it comes below the majority, they vacate, and therefore necessarily the entity has to look for another PCS firm, or it's an individual PCS, as the case may be. There are a lot of issues.
Yes, so. Any other questions from the participants? Mr. PG, you've raised your hand. You may please ask the question. So you can go ahead and ask the question.
Who is that gentleman?
So the name mentioned is PG, but I think now he has lowered his hand.
Okay.
Any questions?
Hello. Hi. I'm sorry, I was not able to unmute myself, so I had to rejoin again. Sir, I have one question. So generally in case where we have any ambiguity or unclearness about a specific provision, how do you go about it so that the auditor doesn't qualify it? So generally in case you have a issue or something, you go to any of these industries like a Big Four or someone and try get an technical memo and you resolve that issue, put that evidence in front of the auditors, and they'll probably just be okay with it. But in a situation like this, how would you go about it?
Was it clear to anyone?
No, sir. So can you please repeat the question?
Okay, so if there is any ambiguity or unclearness about a provision, and accordingly, how do you go about this so that the auditor doesn't qualify his opinion or throw out any disclaimers in his audit report?
It is not related to this subject.
So compliance is something that is checked both by the internal audit team as well as the stat audit team, right, sir?
I agree, but now today's subject is not on this. You are going into some specific queries on how to deal with the non-compliance, whether to cover as a qualification or how to handle it, which is not the subject here. No, we are today discussing on 24A.
Sir, because the provision, let's say it is unclear. So how would the management or the company secretary himself qualify himself saying that, yes, I am well within the provisions of the act? So how does he get the confidence that he say that he's absolutely following whatever is required?
No, do you mean any finding out of audit and how to deal with that in the audit report?
Let's say the statutory auditor comes to you and says, I still have a doubt of whether you are qualified enough to continue as the company secretary for this specific thing or not, because the provision says this thing and somehow I find a deviation in what you currently hold your position as.
You mean the auditor, statutory auditor says the PCS is not eligible to continue as auditor. That's
Maybe
what you
based
mean?
on his opinion. Correct.
Yeah? Yeah?
Yes. Yes, sir.
That remains to be seen, or we have to wait for further clarifications, because we are only debating about some loopholes, some unclear provisions where it requires amendment or clarificatory note so that everyone is on the same page. So today we assume, interpret in a manner, and the regulator has a different view, then it will be an issue. So I think for your query, we need to wait at least till 31/3, before which we hope to have clear picture emerges both from SEBI and ICSI.
So what sort of a solution or what can be my answer if the auditor asks me this question currently as on date, if he wants to do the limited review?
Same
Or
thing, if the things are not clear, we need further clarifications from the relevant authorities.
okay, so we can just basically give them this statement saying that by the year end we might get a better understanding on this and we'll respond. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, sir. Thanks.
Any other queries? So I don't think we have any more questions.
Okay. We can close the program.
Yeah. Yes. So as we come to the end of today's insightful session, I would like to take a moment to express our heartfelt gratitude. Firstly, a big thank you to Mr. Raghunath Ravi for delivering such an in-depth and comprehensive analysis of the amendments to Regulation 24A of SEBI LODR Regulations 2015. His expertise and valuable insights have provided us with a clear understanding of the implication of these changes for SEC audits and the broader corporate governance landscape. I would also like to thank all our attendees for their active participation. Your questions and feedback is what makes these sessions meaningful and impactful. Thank you once again, and we look forward to connecting with you in future sessions. Have a great day ahead.
Aishwarya, one
Yes,
final
sir.
word.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Thanks for the audience or whoever is the person here, not dismissing my views as irrelevant. There is some meaning, although we may not have the solution or answer or clarifications at our end. I am glad that all your questions are irrelevant. That is not the decision here. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, would also request if you can host this on YouTube. It will be for the benefit of a larger audience.
Who is saying this?
Shruti Pendharkar.
Yeah, okay.